All right, so we can start. As far as the measurement goes, I do have 500 grams of flour, 400 grams of water, 2.5 grams of yeast that I'm activating in warm water with just a little pinch of sugar, and 12.5 grams of salt. There's gonna be a little bit of olive oil that we're gonna incorporate into this recipe, but we're just gonna do it later. The thing that is important that I was telling you about flour is that you should start with a whole white flour, like a strong white flour, like the one you're using right now, and then slowly later incorporate more different kind of flour if you want into the mix, just to give a little bit more flavor. White flour, it's just not the best as far as flavor, but it's definitely give you back, especially if you pick a flour like the one you're using, a lot of strength in gluten content. If you're subbing, anytime you're subbing white flour to something different, which it can be whole wheat, or it can be another different kind of cultivar or cereal, like, I don't know, I'm using spelt, for example, 5% of spelt over here, and I'm also using 45% of a flour that has some bran in it, so we should not consider it completely white. It's almost like a half white, half whole grain kind of thing. But my 50%, my other 50% is a very, very strong white flour. So I'm kind of like mixing it up a little bit. And I know how to use this, so I'm kind of like already familiar with it. But again, you should start with like a full white flour dough and then move on a little bit once you get a little bit the hang of it. But we should start. The flour, water over here, as I was saying before, is 400 grams, so 80%. And the salt is 12.5 grams, so it's 2.2% sort of thing. The yeast is activating right now. Actually, I had to throw away a little package of yeast before because it was dead. And it's very, very important to do two things before we start the whole thing. Just making sure that the yeast actually is alive and is activating. And the second thing is to sift your flour. Sifting the flour, you can use like a whisk, or you can use like a filter. Helps not having like bumps and like dry pieces of flour in your dough that are actually later gonna be harder to smooth out even with the kneading. So we should start basically by going all in with the water. And I'm gonna use my hand right now like it's just almost like a fork. Like open fingers like this, and I'm just gonna mix it. Now, if you were using like a very weak flour, that could be like a whole, not like a white flour, or like a whole purpose white flour, for example, that has still white, but their gluten content is very low. You would have something that is very, very similar to almost like a pancake batter. You know what I mean? Like super liquid, not anything like this. Since the protein levels in this flour are all very high, they sucked up the water very good. You see, I already have like a little bit of dough. So just want to make sure that, you know, my hands right now are dirty and they're like all sticky. And I make sure that I trap as much of this flour around the edges over here. And I'm just, you know, scratching my hands on the side of the bowl. Pinching down a little bit. Not really like kneading much. Now we can add the yeast and the rest of the water. Oops. Now I can start kneading in a little bit more. It's all done with an open hand. I'm not doing anything different. I'm just gonna add the salt little by little. You can see I'm like pinching the dough on a side and like I'm folding on itself like that. This is exactly what we're gonna do later when we're gonna do folds. Now I'm doing this movement right here, which is called the rhubarb method. I'm basically like scooping the dough from underneath and just slapping it back in front of it like this. Scoop and slap, scoop and slap. You can feel the dough is getting like harder, like and stronger. That is because of two things, because we're mechanically handling it and also because the salt kind of like activates a little bit of all the enzymes as well and makes it a little bit tighter. Just added the last part of the salt. I'm gonna try to take down. Now this, it's something that it's always a pain in the butt. But if you happen to have a spatula, makes your life just a little bit easier. You can use a fork or a knife, but a spatula works very well. Just checking that everything is filming correctly, because if it doesn't, I will kill myself. Good. So it's super sticky. You see, it's like crazy sticky. It's like what we're gonna do right now with this thing. Where this shaggy stick mess right here, we're gonna make it like a little balloon. And also like the time is gonna help us right now, because we incorporated flour and water together. What that does, without even the action of the yeast, what that does is that it activates the enzymes that are inside the flour. Salt helps a little bit tighten the whole thing down too, but the main thing is enzymes are in the flour, water is the vessels, enzyme eat and decompose more complex proteins into more simple proteins, and that gives the dough more gas and more food basically to produce more CO2, and more CO2 makes more of an open crumb, and that's what we're kind of aiming for. All right, so we're here. I'm gonna start again with the same method that I was using before. I think that I'm almost done, because I can see that you see it's not sticky anymore. The top, it's starting to get a little bit more sturdy. I don't want to go more than this. I'm gonna stop right now, and I'm just gonna pause and come back over here in like 10 minutes, and we're gonna start our folding process. Before doing this, I'm just gonna say like that I'm gonna prepare like a little container that I can fit this dough in about 3 times the size. And I'm gonna make sure that it's like all oiled inside so that the dough doesn't stick to it, and we're gonna have a hard time handling later.